Greetings! The date is August 24th, 2015, and this is another episode of Adventures in Speed Reading. This week has been a very light week concerning this pile of DC graphic novels. This is the pile that I've kind of been focusing a lot of my energy on over the last few weeks when I've been doing these videos. And I haven't really read that many from the pile over the last week because I've been reading another book not found on the pile, The Savage Dragon Archives Volume 3. This is a huge book, like 300 pages or more, and it took me about a week, but I did finish the book. Unfortunately, that meant that I didn't have a whole heck of a lot of time to read any of the books on the pile. I did read a couple, but I didn't get to read as many as I have in the past few weeks. And also, I've been watching a few TV shows in my spare time, so I haven't been reading as much as I probably could have, but whenever I first started doing these videos, I said that this was likely to happen, that some weeks I would have very few books that I read because I might be doing other things. I might be spending my time doing other things other than reading comic books, or I might be reading other comic books like I've been doing this week. And so this is a very light week where I've only actually read 2 books from the pile. And if you'll recall, last week I said that the Adam Strange book, The Man of Two Worlds, that's what it is. That was not on the pile at the end of the video. I had a before and after picture of the pile, and that book was not on the pile because I had started reading it last week and forgot to put it back on the pile when I took that picture. And that is the book that I read first this week. I went ahead and finished it up, and I filmed a video review of that, and that will be going up tomorrow. So you will see a full-blown video on that. But in 2 minutes or less, basically, I didn't really care for this book. I felt like it was way too far in the direction of grim and gritty, and I'll talk a lot more about that in the Adam Strange review that I did. But I didn't much care for this. It felt very tonally off for this character in this world, and also it felt very crowded. It had way too many characters in it that I feel like some of them needed to be explored a lot more. This book maybe needed to be a lot longer so that these characters could have been explored. So ultimately, I didn't much care for Adam Strange, A Man of Two Worlds, and that was the first book that I read from the pile. And then the other one was Robin, Days of Fire and Madness, which I bought last week on Monday. So the day that I filmed last week's Adventures in Speed Reading. And I went ahead and read that this week, and this was a pretty decent story. I've kind of been jumping around in the Tim Drake Robin series, and I was a little confused at times when reading this. This takes place around the time of Infinite Crisis, and so part of it is that I haven't read Infinite Crisis, and there's a little bit of a tie-in with some of the Infinite Crisis stuff, like the Shadow Pact. They appear here, and there's some references to the Day of Vengeance miniseries where a lot of the DC magic users are fighting the Spectra, and then also there's a little bit of reference to the OMACs, which was a big part of Infinite Crisis. And if you don't know anything about any of that stuff, and then you read this book, you might be a little bit confused. I haven't read the OMAC miniseries or Infinite Crisis, so I was a little confused, although I knew the basic broad gist of the OMACs. And then also, there's this group here. They're very similar to the BPRD from the Hellboy comics, and they are an organization. They are a military organization that's kind of sort of superhero-y. They fight extra normal threats, I guess you could say. And these guys actually predate SHADE, which is an organization that Grant Morrison introduced. I believe he's the one who created them in the Frankenstein miniseries in his Seven Soldiers run, which was just a couple years after Infinite Crisis. And this organization is very similar to SHADE. I'm actually kind of disappointed that SHADE came up. Of course, I liked the Frankenstein miniseries and I liked Seven Soldiers, but I'm kind of disappointed that that organization was introduced in Frankenstein because it kind of meant that these guys weren't going to get to be used anywhere. And I would have loved to have seen these guys get their own miniseries where they could kind of be doing a sort of BPRD thing in the DC universe. I think that would have been a lot of fun. Ultimately, this is a decent story. The big thrust of it, there's actually 2 big thrusts. One is that this BPRD type organization wants Robin, Tim Drake, to join them. And from a retrospective point of view, you know that that's not going to happen. You know that Tim Drake is not going to join these guys, and he ultimately doesn't even make that decision in this book, and this is like 6 or 7 issues long. And also, the other thrust is that his ex-girlfriend, or his almost ex-girlfriend, who died back during the War Games crossover, she is back to life, and she's causing trouble and just being an annoying character in general. And so I'm not really selling this book I did enjoy reading it. The art is fantastic by Scott McDaniel, and I have enjoyed some of the other Bill Willingham Robin stories that he wrote. But maybe I would have enjoyed this more if I had read the volume that I'm missing. There's one volume in between the Robin Batgirl crossover, I believe Fresh Blood is the name of that story. There's one volume in between that and this story that I have not read, and then also there's like 6 or 7 issues that haven't been collected. And so there's a little bit of stuff that I'm missing that I feel like maybe would have helped me to enjoy this a lot more. But ultimately, I had a decent time reading it, but at the same time, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I want to get into Robin, what should I read? I wouldn't suggest this. I would suggest several other trade paperbacks before I suggested that they read this. So that's all I have for this week, and I don't have an after picture for the pile. Like last week, I had a before and after picture, but I will keep updating you guys on what the pile looks like as I go through it each week. And so next week I should have more progress done on the pile, since I don't have a gigantic Image comic to read like I did this week. And let's not make any bones about it. I chose to read this Image comic. It's not like I was forced to, but sometimes I'm going to need to take a break from a whole lot of DC comics and read something else, and that's what I did this week. But next week I'll probably have a lot more of these read, and I will be doing a lot more videos on books like that in the coming weeks. So I will see you guys next week, and also throughout the rest of this week with some various videos of different kinds. I'll see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of the day.